In honor of the Thanksgiving holiday and spending time with family, today we are going to be beating up on our favorite cousin, the redheaded stepchild of insurance products, the IUL. Stick around.
Enjoy the episode.
If you're an investor or want to be an investor and you're looking to create passive income that exceeds your monthly expenses, then this is the podcast for you. Here on the Infinite Wealth Podcast, we combine the philosophies of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, along with Nelson. Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Cameron Christensen, along with our co-host, Anthony Faso. And today we are going to be diving into universal life insurance, one of the things that we love to hate. Anthony,
good.
What are your thoughts on today's podcast?
Well, my first thought so far is honestly that was like your third or fourth time nailing the intro, and the first time you introduced me as your favorite co-host.
That was a mistake. That was
I know, but
that's
then you do it a second, third time, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting a little farther. So that's my initial thoughts. But with this episode, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I was surprised it's been so long since we had a podcast about IULs.
It has been a while. And the reason at least for me, why it's coming around right now while we're revisiting this is I've had several conversations about ULs again lately. And unfortunately, none of those conversations have been good. And so, man, we got to bring this back out to you guys, make sure that you guys understand what is going on with that product and make sure that everybody's making some good decisions out there.
You know, it seems to me that it comes in and out of fad where there are a lot of times, a lot of people are talking about IULs and then it subsides for a while. And I think it depends where the stock market is, right? When the stock market goes up, this sounds amazing. We need to do it.
Yeah.
But when market isn't doing so well, nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, and that's true.
But what I will say before we start diving into it, we do have some resources for you on our internet or on our website, not our internet.
On our interwebs.
Why we don't like IULs. And we have some calculators. We showing some illustrations compared to IULs to whole life. We even have a memo from the New York Department of Insurance warning consumers about IULs. So we'll put the link for that in the notes, but you can get some more detail there. But now let's kind of refresh some of our bashing.
Yeah, let's go. Let's get started, guys. The overview of today is we're going to be talking about really the three different types of insurance. And then we're going to be talking about things that we like, things we don't like, right?
Yeah.
Anthony, kick us off, man. Maybe I'll give the overview of the three and then I'll have you start. Guys, the three different types of insurance. One is going to be term insurance. We'll give you guys a definition, but for today's purposes, we've actually separated universal life and whole life insurance. Oftentimes those two get kind of clumped together under one category. I'm not a big fan of that. They call it permanent insurance. And as you start to understand this product, you will quickly realize that universal life is anything but permanent. So that's why we've designated the three today. So, Anthony, tell us a little bit about term insurance.
Term insurance is the most common form of insurance. And I would say, in essence, this is more of the pure insurance.
Yeah.
Right? We're not building any equity. There's no cash value. We're going to pay a minimum premium for a certain amount of death benefit for a certain amount of time. I equate this to more like renting, right? If you want to rent a house, it's easier to get in. Typically your monthly payment is going to be less, and you have that your lease is locked up for a certain period of time. And then when the lease is over, either you need to get out, right? Or if you stay in, the rent is going to go up. So very similar with term, you have a fixed premium for a certain period of time, and that can typically range from 10, 15, 20, or 30 years. Obviously, the longer the term, more the risk there is on the insurance company. Thus, that's reflected in a higher premium. I will say we don't talk a lot about term insurance, but I do want to, we're both proponents of it. We have term insurance policies. And in fact, I even just got a new term on my wife a year or two ago. And so typically the main purposes of term main is to protect the family. If something were to happen, this can help replace the income or maybe help achieve some legacy goals. Also, and another reason to get it is we lock in your insurability, meaning you have that, say you have $1 million of term insurance, you can convert that into whole life no matter what your health situation is. So we got it for really both of those reasons. For one, we have some legacy goals that we want to meet, but also, you know what I found, Cameron, and you're going to feel this if you haven't already, but as we get older, we have a tendency to age, meaning we start feeling older. We start having to pay more attention to our blood work. Like I've even said on the podcast before, I always thought a PSA was like a public service announcement, and honestly, some of those, the good ones are like very touching, right? Now at my age, PSA has a different meaning and it's touching, but in a very different way. Okay. But all I'm just saying is that we have a tendency, our blood work, cholesterol, things start working as well. And our level of health declines. And so the health rating could be different. So we're locking in our health rating.
That was interesting. That was interesting. In regards to aging, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm in my prime. As good as it gets. Faso, I was going to talk about universal life insurance and introduce that to our audience. Guys, if you've been around at all, you have come across universal life in some way, some form. And a lot of times I'll have conversations with clients about the differences between universal life and whole life. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on universal life because I think it helps people understand the way that product is actually going to perform for you or supposedly perform for you. Universal life came out in the late 70s and early 80s. And if you remember what was happening back then is you had a whole bunch of money that was kind of flooding into the stock market. And so the stock market was going sky high. And so there was a bunch of smart bankers, product developers that said, hey, I would love to have market returns under the umbrella of insurance because we get tax-free growth. And so what came about was a universal life product. And so what they have is they actually have two pieces to this policy or this product. One of them is going to be the cash value accumulation side. And what they do with that is they actually attach it to an index. And so it can mirror an index. So usually you got a floor, you've got a ceiling. And so if the market goes up, that account value will follow that up to a certain point. If it falls down or goes down to zero, it'll stop there. And so they've got this window or corridor of performance on the cash value side. That side's not too bad. The kind of Trojan horse, in my opinion, of the where they went wrong in product design is on the insurance side to the universal life. What they did is they paired an annual renewable term policy with that product to pair those two together. So you've got an annual renewable term policy with a cash value function mirroring an index. That's what the universal life product is. And guys, this is where it kind of gets misleading to people, is because when someone shows you a universal life illustration when you're young and healthy, right, the cost of insurance is actually very small and very minimal. But what we know with term insurance is that as we age, like Faso was referring to earlier, that cost of insurance increases every single year. And so with the universal life policy, insurance companies are obligated to cover you. But when you look at an illustration when somebody's 60, 65 years old, the insurance company is covering for you for the amount of insurance that's in there. But man, that cost is skyrocketing each and every year. And so the game that's being played inside of that product is that the market returns are going to outpace that cost of insurance. If you start digging into the illustration and you start looking at age 60, 65, you'll see some notifications on that illustration that'll say lapse, it'll say zero. And so that is a warning sign to, hey, if we don't get the proper returns inside this product, this thing could lapse, it could blow up in our face. And so that is a little bit of history on the universal life product.
Well done, Cam.
Thanks. Anthony, tell them about a whole life insurance.
Whole life, whole life has been around literally over 200 years. I think when we go into the history, I think the first one was in the 1700s.
Wow.
I believe. But
Wow.
in essence, I would say whole life is more like buying your insurance, where it's going to take the premium or the funding is going to be a little higher. However, it's never going to expire like a term insurance. And also there's going to be some cash value or some equity in there, which that's why we like to use it for infinite banking. And that's what we leverage against is the cash value. And in the real simplest terms, whole life is more like reverse engineered for the death benefit. A little interesting fact, the way those policies are designed, the guaranteed cash value is going to equal the death benefit at the time of maturity. And depending on the policy, that maturity may be age 100 or age 121. If you were to look down at a whole life illustration, and those numbers are going to be equal. So, what that means is each year we're getting more and more equity. So the gap between the cash value and the death benefit is getting smaller and smaller. So I would say whole life is more like buying a house. Your premiums are fixed, but also with whole life, there's additional riders that we can add that will amplify the cash value, and that's what we use in the form of paid up additions, or we commonly call PUAs.
Great, good explanation. I want to point out real quick before we move on is just the difference in how long these products have been around. Man, with whole life insurance, we're almost looking at 200 years, right? With universal life insurance, man, what are we, 50 years, right? And so there's a big difference as far as kind of how these insurance companies, the track record that they have with both of these products. Universal life is very new, and I think we're seeing some of the downsides to this as you start to do some research. So,
and I would say in the simplest terms, the biggest difference is who's taking on the risk.
Great point. Yeah.
On a whole life policy, the insurance company is taking on that risk because there is a guaranteed cash value, guaranteed death benefit. So they need to make their investments and keep their expenses in line. And if they don't, the company is the one that's on the hook. And index universal life is very different, where the insurance company takes very minimal risk. Mm-hmm. Their risk is only for the death benefit, and they're getting compensated accordingly on that 1 year term insurance. But where the cash value goes up, or it can go down, and we're going to talk about that in a second. That's all on the responsibility of the insured.
Great, awesome. All right, Faso, let's talk about some of the things that we like about each of these two products. How does that sound?
I have some. Do you have some that you like?
On one side of the equation.
I have two.
Okay.
I have two things that I like about IULs.
Okay, let's hear it. Let's see what you got.
The first one that I like is that it's transparent. Everything is broken out. You can see what the mortality costs, what the term costs are, the admin costs, the general admin costs. I mean, as you can see that there is a lot of costs in there. But you know what? Whole life has some of those too. But what I like about IUL, it's all laid out.
So it's itemized. Yeah.
It's itemized. Yeah. So for me, to me, that is a benefit. I like knowing what the costs are in a financial product. Mm-hmm. Do you have any? Or did you have one you like, or you just want me to do the other one?
About IULs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a goose egg.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I there's not much that I like about IULs, guys. To be honest with you, I've only ever put in one universal life policy. I put it in force, and it was for estate planning purposes. Mm-hmm. So the one thing that I do like about universal life, it's actually a specific product. It's called a guaranteed universal life, and you can set it to be age specific. So what that means is that you put that policy in place and you could designate a certain age that you want to make sure that this policy is going to stay in force. And so you can pick, age 85, age 90, 95 that you want that coverage to make sure that it's in place for. And so that's a great estate planning tool. And so to be honest with you guys, I am a fan, right? There's a certain fit for a GUL and estate planning. Absolutely.
Cameron, I placed 2 GULs. No, I'm just teasing. I only placed 1. And again, that's a good product because in both cases, we're solving for death benefit.
Yeah.
So the death benefit is a problem we're solving. So we want to make sure that death benefit is going to be there. The equity or the cash value, it really is not important. So a GUL, it really, in my eyes, is like an extended term.
Yeah.
And that does have its place. But for infinite banking, that the GUL is not a good is not a good product because it has very little cash value.
Yeah. Great. All right, Anthony, what's your point number 2? What do you like?
The second thing I like about IULs is that they don't have the stigma that whole life has for now. Like what I see, people get excited when they talk about an IUL oh man, I'm participating in the market with no downside. People get a little excited about it. How many people get excited about whole life? Right? There's all these misconceptions about whole life. And I think it's going to take a while, but it will happen where I think the truth will always come out. And I think the truth will come out on IUL. So the second one is kind of a tongue in cheek where it's a positive, but it is only temporary.
Not so much. Awesome. All right.
Let's get on the good stuff.
Let's go. All right. Oh, he's rolling up his sleeves, folks. Yeah.
These shirts they're tight, so only go up a little bit, but I'm going to roll them up.
Been running around this office getting excited about this podcast, right? All right, Anthony, let's move on. Let's talk about some of the things that we don't like about universal life insurance.
You want me to go first?
Drum roll. Go for it, yeah.
Okay. One of the many reasons I do not like universal life is that I don't like my cash value to go down. Now, if you're not familiar with the ins and outs of IUL, you may think that is not possible because the way the person portrays it is, well, if the market goes up, your cash value goes up. And if the market goes down, you're not losing money or you're credited 0. Now, your credited 0 is correct. And what that means is the annual interest you're going to earn that year is going to be a goose egg. However, like we've discussed, there are costs inside the policy. So you might get interested 0 interest, but when you include the costs of the policy, your cash value may actually go down. And I'm looking at my policy. My policy is not the investment. This is a safe place where I store cash that's safe and liquid. So don't want to put it in a place where I could lose money. So that's one of the reasons I don't like IULs. Cameron, do you have a reason or 3?
I do. I've got several. And the way I was going to frame this was these aren't my reasons why I don't like universal life insurance. These are actually clients' reasons why they don't like, universal life insurance. These are actual cases that people have brought to us. These aren't just me telling you my opinion. So Anthony, if you could, can you pull up the Pac Life example?
Mm-hmm.
While he's doing that, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background. This client came to us several years ago. They brought a universal life policy to us. It was with Pacific Life. And the way the lady framed it was she's had this policy for several years and she's been paying premiums, and she noticed that the account balance was not going up. And she brought this to the attention of her advisor. And the advisor said, everything's fine. It all looks great. Don't worry about it.
That was comforting.
Exactly. Yeah. That did not sit well with her. So she started searching for someone to take a look at it. She reached out to us and I looked at it. And here's what we looked at is exactly what you were talking about a second ago, Anthony, is what you guys should see on the screen is you should see an annual statement of a Pacific Life universal life policy. And what we've got highlighted here is we've got highlighted in green the fact that the policy increased by $15,000, just over $15,000 that year based upon the fixed account and then also the indexed account interest. That sounds great, right?
Well, it also depends what we started with.
Yep.
Right. But
Yeah, exactly. And the rate, so if you look at this statement in the top right-hand corner of the screen, it says your policy's average interest rate is 2.23%. So she looks at that and says, hey, this is a positive number, right? I had a positive increase. If I tell you you had a 2.23%, most people think, great, I'm positive. We looked at what she earned, and that was just over the 15,000. But what Anthony had pointed out is that along with Universal Life, there are fees and there are charges in there. And you can see here in red, policy charges over that last year were just over $40,000.
Whoa. Wait,
Yeah.
but she made 15, but policy charges here
are just over $40,000.
Wow.
So they're promoting the gross, right, amount of, hey, you had an increase on this. But when we look in and we debit out kind of the losses, man, this poor lady, she's actually negative $25,000 over that last 12 months. And so, guys, right, that is deceptive marketing. That is borderline criminal, in my opinion, to be able to go out there and tell somebody you earn 2.23%, but in reality, they lost over $40,000 in cash value.
Yikes.
So again, that's not my opinion. This is an actual policy that was in force. And so, yeah, take it for what it's worth. Anthony, what else you got?
Another reason why I do not like IULs is because the lack of flexibility. And what I mean by that is you can never permanently turn off premiums. Now, maybe if you look at an illustration, they may show you where you're not paying premiums out of pocket, but those premiums are being paid, but they're being paid from the cash value. So we're eating up some of the equity to pay the premiums. But with a whole life policy, it can be what's considered paid up. Now, you may have heard of some policies where it might be a 10-year pay or paid up to 65. In essence, what that means is like a paid up to 65 means you pay premiums until you're 65 and then you don't pay anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not like the cash value is paying them. You can't pay them. The premiums are totally turned off. And typically the way that we design our policies is, we really don't have any idea what's the futures hold. I mean, hopefully things go positively, but there's always that risk that things don't. And so what we need is that flexibility in the policy. So when things don't go as planned, with whole life policy, you can turn premiums off at any time. Now, if we do it before year 7, there's some mech issues, but so there are some ways to kind of finagle around it. But to me, it provides comfort that if I have a policy and I have a severe financial dilemma and I can't pay the premiums, I can just call the insurance company and say, hey, you know what? I don't want to pay premiums anymore. They will readjust the death benefit because that death benefit was under the assumption of premiums being continued to be funded, but the cash value is still going to be there. And the cash value is going to continue to grow. For example, I have a client and he is in the retirement phase and he doesn't want to fund the policies anymore. So you know what we did? We turned them off. Okay. And now he has this cash value that is growing tax-free and asset protected, and he still has a death benefit. With an IUL, when life happens like that, your options are limited. So that's one of the many reasons why I don't like IULs.
Man, I'm going to jump on that bandwagon too. And the flexibility was also a point that I had written down. But what I'm going to add to what you said, Anthony, is if you guys have ever spoken to or heard somebody promote an IUL, flexibility is one of the things that they promote. They say, hey, you've got all this flexibility on premiums. But what I'm here to tell you guys is that flexibility on an IUL is a double-edged sword. And what I mean by that is you can change your premiums, but also the insurance company can change your required premiums as well. Again, I've had this exact thing happen when I was early in my career. This is a long time ago. It's actually my first kind of run-in with a universal life product. A lady was referred to me. I met with her, and she was distraught. She had over a couple $100,000 that she had accumulated in her universal life policy, And it had sat there for several years. She hadn't made any premium contributions to it. And she got a notice from the insurance company that her cash value was at 0. And that if she wanted to keep the coverage, that her premium, which was around $5,000 annually, she was going to need to pay $25,000 in premium.
Can I, how old was she?
She was
approximately
late 60s. And this is 13, 14 years ago.
That is, I mean, that ties into my next one. I don't want to step on yours.
Well, yeah, I was adding on yours as far as the flexibility goes, right? And so, again, right, they promote that you, the client, can change the premiums. But think about it. That means that they can too. One of the benefits of whole life insurance is that premium is locked. They can't ever change it as far as that base premium goes. We've got flexibility with PUA funding, but the insurance company cannot come back and change that on us. And so flexibility, favorability absolutely goes to whole life insurance.
I mean, that right there is what really frustrates me, Cameron, because life insurance already gets a bad rap on some things. And man, I couldn't imagine funding all this money and then not only having 0, but you lose a death benefit.
You lose it all.
You lose it all. You know, and I know, and I'm sure, Cameron, you know, when we're talking to our clients, a lot of them say, well, I don't even care about the death benefit when they're in their 40s and 50s, right? But when they're 60s and 70s, their goals change, and it does become a concern.
Man, I'll tell you what, that experience is probably one of the worst experiences I've had in my career. Right, having to be the one to tell that lady that there was really nothing that she could do at that point. And man, to be honest, I'm actually pretty thankful for having that experience. One, I feel terrible for her, but two is that I've never put one in place after seeing that or going through that. So, all right, moving on. Faso, what do you got?
I would say the next reason why I don't like IULs, the juice is not worth the squeeze. What I mean by that, the way that they are presented is that, you get the upside in the market with limited downside. But to me, I like to look at the numbers, right? And it's possible, and you just gave an example, it is possible that this policy, that a universal life policy can go bankrupt. Right? If that cash value goes below 0 or the loan becomes more than the cash value, the policy lapse is kind of the legal term, but I prefer more of the, to me, what's more true is it comes bankrupt, right? You lose everything. Okay. What I wanted to show on here, this is actually a VUL. So it's a variable universal life. And I actually had one at the time. It was sold to me more like a rich man's Roth, right? Where you don't qualify to put in a Roth IRA. We can put money in here, get the returns of the market, and it's tax free. Most VULs are more where they're actually tied to the market or to a specific fund, index, and the IULs are tied more to an index, but now VULs are now getting into the index game here. And this was a client, and we're going to come back to this a couple times, but what I wanted to show here is that there's 3 different scenarios on the illustration. I know if you're listening, don't worry, we're going to just walk through them, but really there's 3 scenarios. One is more of with no rate of return, with a guaranteed expenses, which, you know, that's something we haven't talked about, but which we will here in a minute. But the scenario 2 with the rate of return with the guaranteed expenses, And then scenario 3 is with the rate of return with the non-guaranteed expenses. And really, as we alluded to earlier, there are expenses in this policy, and the contract does have a cap on what those expenses can be. So these first two scenarios are if you had the max expenses a company can allow you to charge. And then the third one is more of this is really what we're currently doing. What I find, I don't want to even say interesting, I might find scary, is of these three scenarios, the first scenario has 0, aka a bankrupt or lapse at year 18. And with the rate of return, with the max expenses, this goes bankrupt in 26 years. Now, the illustration we just looked at reflected an average rate of return every single year of about 6.2%. Now, it's very possible the market or the policy could do better, right? But my view is maybe it could be better, or maybe it could be bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly if you're using this for retirement planning or using for cash flow in retirement, then the risk of something like that happen is going to be even more, is going to be higher. So to me, maybe you get a little more, or maybe you don't. And it's just the juice is not worth the squeeze.
Ooh, oh, guys, if you had one of these policies, I've recommended this before. If you're looking at kind of the range that is projected on your illustration for a UL, reach out to your agent and ask them where this policy is going to end up, and ask them to explain kind of the three options. Inevitably, every single time I've had somebody do that, they always come back with this answer, and they say, well, that's not likely to happen. That's literally the only thing that they have ever said. And guys, I got to tell you, I've been in this industry too long. I've had too many poor experiences where these illustrations do not work out the way that they're projected. So be very cautious.
And you know what'll make it worse? Particularly you start drawing some money out in retirement. If this thing goes bankrupt, you lose the tax protection of the policy. And if there's any gain in the policy from the amount that you had taken out before, you're going to get a 1099.
Yeah.
And you obviously you don't have the money to pay the taxes, or maybe you would have kept the policy, but then also we lose the death benefit. So
guys, if you haven't been able to tell yet, we're almost 40 minutes into this and we're still going strong. We are still beating up on this thing.
I know.
Yeah, right. So stick with us. We're going to wrap up here pretty soon, but we do need to make some very important points, because again, people are being misled out there, and we want to make sure that you guys are educated and understand when somebody approaches you.
What do you got, Cam?
Yeah, let's go. If you could pull up the F and G example. Guys, again, like I said before, I wanted to share case studies with you. You guys know my feelings on this, but this, again, is an actual situation. Client had a universal life policy, was told it was going to perform some way. But again, as we start to look at it, this is not how it is performed. And so this client has put money into this account. And you can see here that he's got account value of just over $14,000. Anthony, what does it say right under that account value? It's highlighted in red on both sides.
You mean the surrender charge?
Yeah.
Oh, it's $6,000.
Exactly. So that was as of February 2023. If you want to look at the column to the right.
But as of February 2024, it's only $5,700.
Exactly.
So it went down.
Well, look at the account value. It went down too.
Huh?
Yeah. So guys, listen, the account value from 23 to 24, it went down, which is what we've been talking about. But also the surrender charge went down. The point that I'm making here is, again, surrender fees and surrender charges on ULs are never talked about when someone presents a universal life policy. Guys, if you have a UL, I plead with you to pull it out, read the contract, and go find the page that talks about the surrender fees as they're outlined. And what you'll see is most of the time there's a 10-year outline that's scheduled for those surrender fees, which means that in the first 10 years, you don't get all the account value that is in there if you were to walk away, right? That is a sliding scale in the surrender fee. So it starts very high early on, and then it starts to diminish But that's one of the ways that they keep individuals kind of locked into these policies is they set that surrender fee really high, and people are kind of lost. They're trapped in there. Go ahead.
Man.
Yeah. So guys, surrender fees, one of the hidden gems of universal life policies. If you got one, take a look at it. If you want one, or if you have one, you want us to take a look at it, send it over.
Another reason why I don't like IULs is because I want more cash value. Okay. So let's take a look.
Please explain. Yeah.
Right now, this is what I find interesting. This was a VUL. This is actually on somebody who was 60 years old. Okay. But let's just get right to the point. Right. What I did is I had compared. This is under the assumption of an interest rate of 6.5. I think we said 6.2 earlier. It's 6.5. Year 10, Cameron, how much do we have in the IUL?
77,140.
Okay. And what do we have in the whole life?
84,718.
Wait, so the whole life has 7,000 more?
It does, yeah.
That's almost 10% more. Right. But this isn't tied to the market. This is boring whole life. Well, probably at year 20, it'll probably catch up because of the amazing rate of return.
It has to.
So at year 20, how much do we have in this VUL?
153,790.
Okay. All right. What do we have in the whole life?
186,369.
We have more than $30,000 more.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I normally don't like going past 20 because it's too much can happen, but maybe then. Okay. What do we have here? Year 30.
240,665.
And what do we have in whole life?
$276,031.
Again, we have 30,000 more. And you know what's also interesting? I know I get too much in the weeds, but the way we designed this policy was really high cash value.
Mm-hmm.
So the death benefit on the whole life policy starts at 217. And by the time 85, it's 344. So it is increasing with the VUL, it stays at 300. So we even have more cash value and we have more death benefit. Cam, does he have any more reasons why you don't like IULs?
I do. I feel like I mentioned a minute ago, I feel a little redundant at this point. Is I had another example of a client that had brought an example to us. They texted me a picture of this, and so I've got it on my phone. But if you guys can guess what this is going to be another surrender fee.
What?
Yep, exactly. Unfortunately, the client's policy stated that she has an account value of $9,924. Anthony, any guesses on what the surrender fee is on this policy?
Probably a couple hundred.
Close, $20,632.
Oh,
yeah. So she's got an account balance of $9,000. Actually, it's $15,000, but she's got some policy charges of $5,000. Takes it down to $9,900, and then there's more. Wait, there's more. There's also a surrender fee of $20,000. So if this client wanted to walk away today, she'd walk away from everything. She'd walk away with $0 in her pocket, unfortunately.
That ties into another one of the reasons why I don't like IULs is because it only amplifies the biggest obstacle people have when doing infinite banking.
Yeah.
And that is that slow start, right? We put in that dollar, don't have access to that entire dollar. But with that surrender charge, that's slapped on top of that cash value or subtracted from it. So it's only hindering your liquidity, which then really, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you want to leverage that cash value to do some real investing. And it's going to be even harder to do that with an IUL.
Oh, great point. Actually, I didn't add this. The client I just shared with you, the one with the $20,000 surrender charge, she approached us. She already had that policy, the UL policy in place. We came in and we added a whole life policy to her portfolio. And then check this out, Faso. Yeah,
what?
We started using the cash value in the whole life policy. And she's like, wow, this is great. So I could use the cash value now today. And she's like, well, let's take a look at my universal life policy. I'd like to use that too.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Of course. So she calls up the insurance company and says, hey, I'd like to take a loan, and they say, sorry, can't do that. You don't have an account value that you can loan against at this point. But they did tell her to stick with it. Don't go anywhere. Stick around for the long run because it's going to come back. And it's going to be worth millions. So unfortunately, that was her scenario. Again, hope you guys don't fall into that one.
Okay, I'm going to go through some of these just for
quick.
time.
I've got one to wrap up, but hit some of these.
I have one to wrap up too.
Mine's better.
We will see. Another reason why I don't like IULs is we only recommend people invest in things that you know. And now your cash value is invested in the stock market. If you know the stock market, then go invest in the friggin' stock market, right? Just don't go through and worry about all of these expenses. Another reason why I don't like IULs is I don't trust the insurance company not to raise their fees and expenses. Like we'd mentioned earlier, I do like that they detail out the expenses, but they have that ability upon their whim to simply increase it. Another reason why I don't like IULs is you don't participate in the dividends. And what I mean by that is twofold. When we're investing in the stock market, if you're investing directly or in an index, you also get to participate in the dividends of those stocks. You don't do that in the you don't get credited for the dividends of the S&P 500 or whatever that index you are in. Also, you don't get dividends from the insurance company. We only work with mutual companies, meaning they're owned mutually by the policyholders. Thus, we get to share in the profits. We get tax-free dividends, but IULs do not participate in those in those dividends. My final one, Cam. Are you?
Let's hear it. Let's hear it. What you got?
Okay, but I don't want to have like a big one and then you like have to follow.
If you like this video, I know you're like this one. And if you want to learn how investors use infinite banking to increase their returns and lower their taxes, check this out. And if you have some questions and want to see if infinite banking is for you, hop on a discovery call with us. Link for that will be in the description.